Okay, and I think we are live. How's the audio out there for everybody? All right, can anybody hear me? Please clap. All right, got some stuff in the chats, all right? People saying hello. Jordanian Christian, hello to you. Okay, good. Someone can hear me. So, all right. Good, good. All right, so as we wait for a few more people to come in, how's your week been? Let's see. Hold on, what do I have here? Oh, no, it's not important. All right. Let's see. All right. Iman, followed by Arabic script, it looks like. Hi, hello there. Adam Eggers, pandemical. Ah, yes. Yes. Very pandemical. All right, good. Bunch of people in now. Zane Rossler, did your video about Holocaust deniers receive a Streisand effect? Well, plenty of Holocaust deniers found the video, but I have my comment filters set to catch most of them. Some of them make it through because, as I have found, anti-Semites are probably some of the most creative people, like, in the internet for coming up with new words for Jews. Like, it is really quite remarkable how easy they can move on to new words. It's impressive. See, Jordanian Christian, you got a coin from Harun al-Rashid's time. That is actually really interesting. What's the word? Numismatology? You into a numismatology, Jordanian Christian? Let's see. Anne McNaughton, can't complain. Life is back to normal in New Zealand, so all's good. Yes. Kiwis in the audience. Fantastic. Not to belittle New Zealand's achievement in reaching, their super low COVID rates, but you're an island in the middle of the ocean that's 19 hours away from civilization. And I'm not counting Australia as part of civilization. But, still good work there. Brit boy, fine. Just woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning to watch you. Well, thank you. I hope it's worth it. I hope it's worth it for you to wake up this early to watch a Californian live stream. It's the most inconvenient time zone for the rest of the world. See, Jordanian Christian. Yes, okay. So you are into numismatology. I'm guessing you're a coin collector, Jordanian Christian. Let's see. 407 for rent. Have you got me wondering about what word you're talking about? Oh, what words? There's plenty of bad words for Jews. It reminds me of that line from Rick and Morty. That glip glop is like the C word and the N word had a baby and was raised by all the bad words for Jews. Kind of that thing. There's a lot of them. In fact, I think a lot of the ones on my list, I just went online and looked up, anti-Semitic words and just put them all in there. So yeah, and McNaughton, we put in the really, really hard yards to get to this point. Yes, distance. And yes, Jordanian Christian, you are a numismatic. It's a fun hobby. I tried getting into it when I was younger, collected a bunch of pennies, copper pennies, and then occasionally just found a coin here and there. Silver dollar. I think a friend got me a coin from like the time of like Diocletian. But then again, the coins from the time of Diocletian are they're not pure silver. Either that or they're super chipped. But yeah, so right, fantastic. Okay, so what to do? I was thinking about, after we did the live stream last month about making this a regular thing. And so this is my attempt at making it a regular thing. Try to get these out about once a month. And so, yeah, I'm still trying to think of a name, some history themed name to come up for these live streams at the moment. There's a bunch of recommendations, but at the moment, I'm leaning towards Rendezvous for reasons I will explain at some later point. See, Brit Boy, your views on homosexuality and gay marriage, one abortion. Well, the first two I'm gonna not gonna get into, but abortion is the one I feel most free to talk about, and that is there is no, from my point of view, there is no moral argument in support of abortion. There are practical arguments people can make, but there is no world in which there's no world in which you can argue that killing an unborn child who hasn't had a chance to live is a moral good. You can argue that it's a moral practical, but there is no world in which that is a moral good. So that is the landmine of an issue I am willing to step on over and over again. I did make a video about abortion, though I kept it being a neutral viewpoint, mostly just stating all the statistical stuff. That was back, late 2015, early 2016, maybe. The Timur Emelianenko. Timur Emelianenko, better don't step into this topic. Ooh, I'm not sure which one you were talking about, but abortion is the one I will step into. All right. So I guess got some people here now. Any questions? Anything you want me to talk about? Working on videos and stuff. Diggs, thoughts on keyboard atheists? I wish they had better stuff to do, but apparently there aren't enough Twitch streamers for them to watch or be. I don't know. I don't watch Twitch. Oh, Timur, you're Molenko. Okay. Diggs, I'm surprised the Fedora economy is sustaining such growth. Yes. I've noticed over the last few years I guess what you could call the return of like new atheism. Like ever since Trump got into office, we've seen sort of a slow return, a slow reemergence from the caves of the new atheists. Like reminding me a lot of like 2007 atheism. That's what some of it is starting to remind me of. And it's like, I haven't seen that in a while. I haven't seen that since like the Venom Fang X days and whatnot. Let's see. But yeah, thoughts on keyboard atheists? Yeah. Most of them need to get better lives. Your views on Trump? Brit Boy? Okay, Brit Boy. My views on Trump are that I don't think calling him a racist or a fascist is quite accurate, as in it doesn't really explain all the stuff. Like I think a much better explanation for everything about Trump has to do with being a narcissist. Trump is absolutely a narcissist, and I think that explains most of his actions better than racism, fascism, Nazism, because too much of else what he does isn't really consistent with those ideas. It's like he is God, Trump, that Nazi supporting Israel and all those Jews. What a Nazi, whatever, you know. And then, of course, there's all the years from before he got involved in politics where no one thought he was racist at all. So the disappointing part with Trump is that when he started running for president and decided to run on the Republicans, he was playing nice with racists, but not because he was racist, but because Trump assumed Republicans were racists. That's why when David Duke endorsed him, he didn't immediately renounce it, because Trump assumed that, oh, Republicans are racist, aren't they? So I guess I'll accept David Duke's endorsement. Which kind of tells you that Trump really was kind of, quote unquote, a New York liberal. He had these ideas about conservatives and Republicans being, you know, backwards, bigoted hicks. And so he didn't condemn or reject the endorsements of people like David Duke or members of the alt-right, because he had his assumptions about what American conservatives were like. And so, to sum it all up, Trump's a narcissist, not a racist, but he's also a bad president. And the worst outcome I think that could happen in November is Trump loses by a narrow margin. If that happens, that is, oof, we're in for a rough ride for the next at least 4 years. That's assuming COVID doesn't kill us all first. All right. So, Jordanian Christian, why were the Umayyads so anti-Muslim or non-Arab? I don't think the Umayyads were anti-Muslim. They were quite pro-Muslim. It's just, it was their brand of Muslim. They were they were sort of anti-non-Arab, but I think that's more just due to kind of a established power kind of thing. You know, it's like basically all the people who were in power around Muawiyah were Arabs from, you know, the time of Muhammad. And so keeping that general power structure in place, you know, they formed the ruling classes throughout the Umayyad period. And so that's just kind of the way it was. Oh, okay, you clarify. Anti-non-Muslim, yes. The Umayyads were anti-non-Muslim, I think, because they saw non-Muslims as a potential fifth column within the caliphate. You know, it's like, well, I mean, Muslims serve Muslims serve as potential fifth columns in other countries that we eventually invade. So why wouldn't non-Muslims be, you know, potential fifth columns for people who want to invade our land? That's my assumption anyways. See, Stephen Blythe, back again. Who is the guy who helped you with the Federal Reserve video? The other guy who appeared in the Federal Reserve video was Mr. Beat, Matt. He has a channel called Mr. Beat. He makes social studies and history videos. His channel was linked at the end screen. We've done a couple collaborations before. My most popular video, about my first video in my History of the Jews series, that was one video that we collaborated on. And then another one was about the Rust Belt and Sun Belts. We did a collaboration on those. So yeah, that was the guy who was with me in that Federal Reserve video. Let's see here. Tom Jenkins, atheism isn't really ascendant now. It's neo-paganism that's popular. Well, I guess it depends on what you think neo-paganism is. Because I find with most neo-pagans tend to be more just like cosplaying atheists. You know, it's like they just want to cosplay in robes and crystals and candles and draw pentagrams on the ground. That seems to be more their bag, at least coming from the outside looking in. See. And I guess I just answered your other question, Jenkins, my thoughts on neo-pagans. Brit Boy, what's your problem with Biden? Well, Biden is not as moderate as he would leave you to believe. Biden is a moderate within the context of the Democratic Party. he's not a moderate within the context of American politics. There's also the problem that a lot of the issues that have been plaguing the African American community for the last 40 years, a lot of the stuff that caused high levels of arrest, Biden was a big pusher behind a lot of that. A lot of the very strict anti-drug laws, strict incarceration laws, especially at the federal level, Biden has had a hand in those since the 1970s. And so that's a big issue. Though I think for me, the biggest worry with Biden is that he's going to more or less be just kind of a puppet of the Democratic Party. It's like when Trump was about to come into office, the hope was that Trump would mostly be a figurehead president and then just let the GOP handle most of the policy stuff and pick his advisors and cabinet members. With Biden, that's kind of the worry, because the rest of the Democratic Party is further to the left than Biden is. Especially that's where the momentum seems to be at the moment. And so my concern with Biden would be that he would be, in fact, just a figurehead president. But once again, it's a little too early to see. Diggs, are you thinking of making a Discord server? I don't really use Discord. I'm not a member of any Discord servers, and so since I don't use it for anything, I don't really see much point in creating one. It's like, I'm not against it on principle. It's just that I don't use it currently, and I don't have a super strong urge to use it in the future. Though I do think I think one of my stretch goals on Patreon is to set up a Discord server at some point, but I can't remember exactly which level it is. Purple Pill Philosophy, hello. See, you should redo your Exodus vid in light of the book The Exodus, How It Happened and Why It Matters by Rick Elliott Friedman. It explains everything. Well, I have not read that book because, well, since I'm not working on anything related to Exodus, I haven't been reading books about Exodus. So I'll have to check that out, and maybe I can do an addendum. Maybe not. I don't know. So I'll get around to that eventually. Right now, I've got videos planned for most of the rest of the year already. COVID is forcing us to plan things out a little further, while also making sure that we can change things at a moment's notice. Let's see. Zane Rossler, do you think Bernie Sanders is the Barry Goldwater of the left? Bernie Sanders would have been the Barry Goldwater of the left had he won his party's nomination. Though there's still a chance he could play a similar role. Definitely. It's like he very well could redirect the party towards more socialist ideas, at least being more open about it. But this will also depend on how Biden's presidency works out. So it's going to be a wait and see kind of thing. Garrett Allen, sorry to jump into more politics, but what are your views on statues being removed? Famous statues like Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt. What about the Confederate statues? Can we find a solution? Okay, so I talked a little bit about this in an interview I had with a website and YouTube channel called New Areopagus. I think I linked to it in my community panel. And when I talked about it, it's kind of like a secular version of iconoclasm. And so, and my feelings about them vary from set to set. Like the Confederate statues, I don't have much of a problem with them being taken down, though I'm not a big fan of the mob coming to take them down. If an individual community wants to take a statue off of public land, that should be up to them. And if a person on private land wants to put up a statue to something that the rest of us might view as horrendous, I say that's their prerogative. Abraham Lincoln, when they were threatening to tear down that statue of Abraham Lincoln that was built and paid for by freed slaves, that they seem to be losing the plot on that one. And that Theodore Roosevelt statue in front of the Natural History Museum, at least the statue as it was kind of yikes. So I think they could just replace the statue with a different Theodore Roosevelt one, or get rid of all the people walking behind that statue, just to make it seem a little less yikes. But, Yeah. Yeah. So Theodore Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln shouldn't tear down those statues. The Confederate statues probably should, but I'd leave it up to the localities to decide if they want to do that. And it should be done through a proper process, not by, mobs pretending that they're liberating Baghdad from Saddam Hussein. Tom Jenkins, yes, thanks. Most of them are very anti Semitic and historically illiterate. I've heard some say Christianity has nothing to do with Judaism. Okay. Yeah, I've heard some of that as well. It's weird. I don't know how you get there. Let's see. Christian Vibrecht just tuned in. Any theories to why so few YouTubers live in Mississippi? I don't know. I mean, I can't tell you. Technologically speaking, there's nothing stopping them. I guess it's just creative types show up in certain areas more. They're more likely to show up in urban areas. But then again, I live in a rural-ish, more suburban than urban. But I can't say why so few live in Mississippi. Like, I know, I think it's Destin from Smarter Every Day lives somewhere down in the South. It's like either Alabama. Yeah, I think it's Alabama Destin lives in. So, yeah. Jordanian Christian, Joe Biden is obviously developing dementia. Yes, that's another concern. Like back when the campaign started like a year ago, it felt like Joe Biden didn't really want to be there and that he was kind of just being pushed by everyone else. But now that he's winning, he seems a little more into it. But, he's still going to be running that. Well, I would call it a front porch campaign, but it's more like a basement campaign. And that seems to be working for him. The less he's out in public, the less chances he has to just suddenly start saying, "Get these squirrels off me." So yeah, it's a good strategy for him. He should keep it up. If anything, Joe Biden should also even just skip the debates. It's a far better option for him. Okay. Marcella Smith. The Roman Republic never declared itself an empire, yet this term is applied in historical retrospect. At what point will the U.S. be considered to have become an empire by future historians? Well, I'm pretty sure it will be considered an empire. I just don't know at what point future historians will, because it's going to depend a lot on what happens between now and then. So yeah, because a republic can be an empire, the French Empire of World War I was a republic, or at least it was a republic in the metropole itself, not necessarily around the rest of the empire. So yeah, Brit Boy. Who was your choice during the 2016 Republican primary? And healthcare. I'm European, so universal healthcare. Yeah. So back in the 2016 primaries, I had sort of I guess I had a list of people I preferred and ranked them. My top pick back then was Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, son of former Congressman Ron Paul. And once again, I note this was 2016 Rand Paul, not 2020 Rand Paul, so that's a different guy. So yeah, my second choice was Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was my second choice. And I think Rubio may have been a third. Kasich was, I don't really think I had anyone beyond third there. Trump was just my last choice. That's what I remember there. And universal healthcare, I don't think it would work. And in the picture of the global economy, I don't think the United States can afford to have a universal healthcare system. Like most of the big medical developments or elements in the world come from the United States. They come from money made in the United States. In order to get those healthcare developments in technology and medicine and whatnot, you need enough excess resources and capital to fund that kind of research. You don't get those levels of excess funds in a more socialized economy, which is why the world kind of needs the United States to be this free market system without much of the welfare state, because it funds everyone else, because once we develop some kind of medical technology here in the United States, the rest of the world ends up getting it for a lot cheaper because, well, they're not playing by a regular market rules. But then again, neither is the US perfectly itself. But yeah, it's complicated. Other countries might be able to make it work. I just don't think it would work in the US. So yeah, Stephen Blythe, is it true the middle class started in England? Well, that's where we like to we usually think of the middle class as coming about with like the Industrial Revolution, and where we have a class of people who buy most of their stuff rather than make it themselves. So you could argue that, it's like the Industrial Revolution began in England, and so we could postulate that the middle class began there, but I would have to do some more research to come up with anything more definitive. Yeah. All right, Christian Vibrecht, a second question. Did you watch Noah Caldwell's Gervais videos when he toured California Interior? I have not seen that, so I'm afraid I cannot give many thoughts about it. So yeah, Brit Boy, what's the difference between 2016 Rand Paul and 2020 Rand Paul? Well, 2020 Rand Paul has done a lot of stuff to just... 2020 Rand Paul has very much been kind of has gone quite Trumpian in a lot of areas. And so he's been very defensive of the president, even on things that he doesn't really need to be. And so that's my apprehensions about modern Rand Paul versus 2016 Rand Paul. Timur, do you believe horrors of communism are severely understated in the American educational system? I do, but then again, I think it's understated in much of the world that didn't live under communism during the 20th century. I think the horrors of it can be understated because we didn't live through it. It's like there's a reason why, like in Poland, you see people holding up, like signs saying that they're against both Nazis and communists because they fought them both. So I think so Eastern Europe is this weird place where like the two big authoritarian ideologies of the 20th century, they've suffered through both of them. Though I think some of their dispositions now might be just because they had to suffer under communism for longer than they did under fascism. Let's see, Jordanian Christian. When Mehmed II conquered Constantinople, he declared himself Kaiser First Rome, or Kaiser of Romans. Yeah. Why was the notion of the Ottomans being successors to the Romans abandoned by his successors? Well, can't say 100% certain, but I think it's has a lot to do with just sort of they had their own traditions. It's like the Ottoman Turks were trying to portray themselves as sort of a continuation of the early Arab caliphates. That's why the sultans, one of their other titles also was caliph. Every sultan of the Ottoman Empire was a caliph, though they never super emphasized that title, but that they still had that to go to. So I don't think they felt the need to call themselves Caesars. So yep, Sam GGG. Hi, love your national debt series. Do you think Ron Paul's Fed gold standard reboot is still practical? Well, I think there are ways to make a gold standard work, but it's complicated. And I do not have all the information in my head at the moment to answer that. See, Stephen Blythe, would you make a video on the history of the military-industrial complex? Well, the problem with the history of the military-industrial complex is that it's more of a concept that you can insert a bunch of stuff into if you wanted to. And of course, if I were to do anything with the concept of the military-industrial complex at this moment, I would want to do something like how the existence of the military-industrial complex concept was just sort of taken by everybody to make any kind of thing they want. Like in the 60s and 70s, you heard people start using the phrase, like the prison industrial complex, or you heard like in the 80s and 90s, you started hearing people say sort of like, the education industrial complex and stuff like that. Let's see, air smells nice. Your opinion on the Great War and how it impacted the timeline. It impacted it greatly. We're still dealing with its consequences, especially in the Middle East. There's a million videos you could watch. It'll give more or less the same opinions that I gave just there. Probably one of the worst things to come out of it was the Soviet Union and communism, because the Soviet Union and communism then motivated Nazism, which then gave us, the Holocaust, etc., etc. Plus World War I also gave us the Armenian genocide. And I could go on, but it's a lot of the same stuff over and over again. So yeah, X marks the spot. STFU, the horrors of communism are mostly lies and dishonest propaganda by Western imperialists. Yeah. Okay, then. Yeah, just ignore all the graves in the ground. Got it. Okay. Zane Rossler. Oh, a super chat from Zane Rossler. Love the vids. Keep it up. Thank you, Zane. Thank you very much. See, you call yourself. Okay, X marks. Whoa, X marks the spot is commenting a lot here. Let's see. Let me get. All right, there you are. So yeah, Diggs, do you think it is that the Democrats like Bernie, while despite being populist, are less racist nowadays? Yeah, I think the Bernie stuff is more coming from like the Democrats have had sort of a socialist current. It hasn't been dominant, but the socialist current within the Democratic Party has been there. I would argue since like William Jennings Bryan ran, but definitely since Woodrow Wilson. So yeah, got another super chat here. Let's see. All right. All right. Hello, Medrano. For a $10 super chat from Medrano. How was gun control during the Wild West? Left-wing YouTubers affirm that the Wild West was really boring and had very strict gun control. But I looked into some sources and it seems to be a lie. Well, here's the thing. Gun control in the Wild West, it's not my area of expertise, but here's what I can say about it. Gun control was very much a local issue in the Wild West. Some towns you would go into would demand that newcomers be disarmed and some didn't. That is the reality behind the situation there. And so I'll have to do more research and get back to you on that. But my understanding from what I know is that it was a local issue. Since the Constitution forbid Congress from making laws, it did not forbid states or local governments from making laws. And this was before the 14th Amendment was interpreted to apply to all things of all levels of government. Let's see. Yeah, there's a tanky somewhere in the chat. Stephen Blythe, what was the language of Constantinople? Well, depending on the time period, it's been Greek for a long time, but Arab became a major language. Turkish is a major language in it now. And so it's been numerous languages, but I'd say Greek for a long time and then Turkish, basically. With some Arab and Armenian and a little Latin thrown in for spiciness. Diggs. Quick, we must deny the Holodomor to make him think he's among friends. All right. Diggs. I think most historians are anti-communist. I wouldn't necessarily say that. It depends on where you're looking for historians. Like if you're looking for people who write in the realm of popular history, you won't find too many. But if you go into academia, they are more common. I mean, Marxist historiography is a thing for a reason. And it's the dominant theory you'll find in academia, but not the only. Let's see. Oh boy, the chat seems to have devolved into people talking to the tanky, or the people who they're calling a tanky. Okay. All right, people talking about the Holodomor. Oh, wow. Just everybody's talking to who X marks the spot. Let's see. Okay, something not about him. Christian Vibrecht. If you played WoW, which race or class would you pick? I've never played WoW. I don't know the races that are in the game or the classes that are in the game. So I'm afraid that is I can't say. Can't say. The limits of my WoW knowledge don't go past that 2006 episode of South Park. How do you kill which has no life? And wow, actual, okay. Okay, Tom Jenkins. I actually don't know much about the Holodomor, although I do have some Ukrainian ancestry. What about China? Oh, okay, you're still talking to the tanky in the chat. Jesus, that's a lot of... Okay. Wow, everybody wants to talk to the commie. All right. Stephen Blythe, thank you for giving something else to talk about. Was the Hagia Sophia a Christian church before? Yes. So the Hagia Sophia was originally a church, but then after the Turkish conquest of Constantinople, it was converted into a mosque. And then after the not the Young Turks Revolution, but after World War I and Mustafa Kemal took over, the Hagia Sophia was turned into a museum. But now Erdogan in Turkey is trying to turn it back into a mosque. And what might happen to the Christian artistic elements within the building is what a lot of people are concerned about. See, Diggs, thoughts on cancel culture infiltrating the political scene? Well, I'd say it's been there for quite some time. And I think the worst thing about this cancel culture debate that's going on is that the fact that people are denying its existence. Like, if you're denying the existence of cancel culture, that's you're basically like gaslighting everybody, I think. So yeah, denying cancel culture, denying the existence of cancel culture is gaslighting. Now, there can be debates over how effective cancel culture is, but the fact that every day on Twitter you see a hashtag to the extent of blank is over party, I think is a pretty good evidence to it existing. How effective cancel culture is something that can be debated. Oh boy. Okay, all right. Air smells nice. How underdeveloped was the Ottoman Empire during World War I? Well, they were trying to be more developed right before it. They got a lot of help from the Germans building railroads and modernizing their military. Unfortunately, it wasn't quite enough. And the biggest problems the Ottomans were having was a lot of sort of manufacturing and industrial problems. Like they were trying to build up their own domestic industry, but as part of sort of the capitulations they had to make to the Europeans, they had to keep their markets open to foreign made goods. And because of that, they couldn't build up their own domestic industry. Now, some people defend that decision by saying, it's like, well, free trade is economically better for everyone in the long run. And it's true. It's just not great in the short run for a country on the verge of collapse. But sometimes if you can't avoid the collapse, it's just better to let it happen and open up your markets. Let's see. Ooh, all right, here. Ooh. All right, Christian Vibrecht. Any theories to why China, after its many self-inflicted wounds, managed to become stronger economically than India? Well, I think China has a much longer history of being sort of politically unified than India does. Like, China has been internally unified before. It's also been internally disunified. India, on the other hand, until the modern day, like until basically European imperialism, India was only ever unified under an outside power. And so I think for India, there's just more inherent sort of political disunity, for one. And that, and the other thing China had to its advantage was just the fact that it has just millions of, nowadays billions of just human bodies that they can throw at a problem. And so they had a bunch of low-skilled workers that they could offer to manufacture stuff for a lot less than Western companies could. Like one of the reasons we saw sort of the deindustrialization in the United States in the mid-20th century is because countries like China eventually started opening up and offering to build stuff, manufacture products. And American unions couldn't compete with the cheap labor in, developing nations like China. And we're starting to see some of that for India as well, but India has a few other internal issues to overcome. But I'll have to get back to you more on precise details. See ya. All right, let's see. Diggs. Do you think it's plausible that Britain and the Empire could have won World War II without the Yanks and Soviets? I'd say as long as they held Suez and the Iraqi oil fields, they could starve out Germany, i.e. World War I. Well, that would depend entirely on how well the occupations of France, the Low Country, basically it depends on how well the occupations of the parts of Europe they were doing were going, or how well they would have gone. But also the Soviets were probably going to attack Germany eventually if Germany didn't attack them first. The two of them were just kind of diametrically opposed. And so they were going to come to blows at some point. Just a matter of when. So I don't know if the British could have beaten them by themselves, but I think the British and the Soviets probably could have beaten the Nazis without America. It just would have taken longer and been a lot bloodier. Okay, let's see. All right, Diggs. China still has the largest impoverished population on Earth. They've gone from having everyone in poverty to half of everyone in poverty. That's true. There's still a lot of room to grow in China, but then again, that is a huge improvement. And China and the lives for people in China only started improving when they embraced some elements of a market economy. They started backing away from centralized planning, not completely, but backing away from it a bit, and lives improved. That is an amazing achievement. Let's see. Ooh, boy. All right. Air smells nice. How was Finland and Poland doing under the Russian Empire? Well, I can't say what Finland was doing. I know Finland was like the first country to pay the United States back all the money it owed after World War I, which is just a random fact I learned some time ago. Poland was another one of these minorities within the Russian Empire that wanted to, build up its own cultural capital, but the Tsarist government wasn't a fan of that. The Tsarist government did similar things to Poland that they ended up doing to Ukraine. So it's yeah, it's a habit. So yeah. All right. Medrano. After watching your Historian Essential video, I got to the conclusion that Slavoj Žižek is a Marxist historian because that's the lens he uses to see history, but he believes in capitalism. Well, I haven't dug too much into Slavoj Žižek to comment on that, so I'll have to look into Slavoj Žižek. I've heard the name before. You know, like the guys at Wisecrack really love Žižek, though he's an odd duck, and I'll have to, as they call him, a curmudgeonly mountain troll. So I'll have to look into him a little more. Let's see here. More people talking. See more people debating with tankies and whatnot. Okay, Diggs, would you consider China communist? I still would, considering how little freedom private entities have in the country. Yeah, so China is definitely politically communist. You know, the Communist Party still rules, and they definitely push a lot of Marxist rhetoric. And they do have a lot of control. Like, fact of the matter is, free enterprise only exists in China so long as the party deems it acceptable. You know, the market exists at the whim of the party. And so, yeah, I would say it's not quite appropriate to refer to China as being capitalist, but it's not full-blown communist either. It's its own weird thing. I would honestly say China is probably most accurate to call them call them fascist, really. You know, there are people who have businesses, but those businesses serve at the pleasure of the party, similar to what happened in Nazi Germany. So, yeah, I'd say I declare modern China to be more fascist than anything else. Jordanian Christian, I'm just sitting here drinking a root beer float. Yep. Enjoy yourself. We're all seeing it here. Let's see. Air smells nice. How close was France to collapse during World War One? Depends on what you mean by collapse. I don't think they would have politically collapsed. You know, like be completely overrun. But I do think you could have seen a revolution in France. Yeah, I think you could have seen a revolution in France, but not to the point where, you know, the country would be overrun by a foreign invader, I think. But I'd have to look more at the domestic situation in France. I know they had numerous strikes and some minor protests, well, big and minor protests from even some soldiers. So I have to take a little more look into that, into the domestic front for France. Let's see. Brit Boy, your opinion on tankies? Yeah. Well, once again, I actually have a video project that'll be coming out in late November that involves me looking into tankies. And one of the problems I have with looking into tankies is that when I look up, like, okay, what are left-wing YouTubers and internet people saying about tankies? And what I find that they say about tankies is that, one, a lot of them don't like to hear people call them tankies. You know, like if you go to what was it? Like the Pac-Man guy and Re-Educated and some others, they don't like calling them tankies. It's like, I mean, it's like I watch some of their videos on tankies and they're saying like, oh, I mean, I know what people mean when they say a tanky, but we shouldn't call them tankies because that's a derogatory term. And it basically sounds like the left's own view of tankies is that like, we don't necessarily like everything they do, but they're useful for us. And so it seems like the tankies are used by other members of the left to be kind of like useful idiots, basically. It's like, I mean, if we need somebody to go into the street and knock a few heads, we'll just let the tankies do that. My opinion, personal opinion on tankies is, I have the same opinion about tankies that I do about skinheads. I don't like them. Let's see. See, Tom Jenkins. I get the impression China was fertile ground for communism. It's a sheep society. No offense. I'll let the Chinese decide whether or not they're offended at that. And too respectful of authority. I agree that China is its own beast. Yeah, China, once again, it is its own beast. And sheep society, I don't know. I'll let them decide if that's offensive. I'm not going to be the white person who pretends to be offended on other people's behalfs. Let's see. Yeah, some more talking about the tankies in the comments. Timur, Confucianism is a good ground to any totalitarian system, not individualism. That is correct. Confucianism is definitely handy for more paternalistic societies. I'll just say that Confucianism is very paternalistic. It's the idea that the whole, it's like the entirety of society should act like a family. That means, you take care of each other, but it also means you listen to dad. You listen to the patriarch. Brit Boy, do you own guns? Personally, I don't. It's not out of an ideological thing. I'm a big Second Amendment supporter, but for one, it's a little like I've never actually fired a gun that wasn't like black powder. Like I've never fired a gun that I didn't need to use a ramrod to, load. And it's something I've been thinking about doing, but it's like in my head, I've always been like, if I'm going to get a gun, I'm also going to want to get like a concealed carry just for the sake of having it. And here in California, concealed carries are a lot harder to get. Let's see. Tom Jenkins, separated from evil intent, Italian fascism, for example, has some better, more realistic ideas than communism. Well, what should be noted is that, of course, Italian fascism, the product of Mussolini, may have been more realistic as well. Well, because Mussolini was a socialist. It's like the only place Mussolini stopped being thought of as a socialist was in Italy, where their political spectrum is just their own thing also. Let's see here. Diggs, Italian fascism still failed pretty hard. Yeah, it did, but you got to think like, was that the fascism's fault or was that just Italy's fault? Because Italy, modern Italy has just been kind of just one train wreck after another. So fascism's not a great political philosophy, but Italy just kind of has been a mess. It's like the mess of the Western world. So yes, Stephen Blythe. Was Charlemagne really a Roman emperor? It depends on whether or not you think the Holy Roman Empire was Roman. I personally think no, but he was a Holy Roman Emperor, so he doesn't really need to be a Roman Emperor. We have a name for his thing. See, Legacy Uthmania. Legacy Uthmania. What about the South China Sea? China's making artificial islands so they can try to claim more of the South China Sea. That's as far as I need to go there. They're literally creating land to claim more sea. See, Kristen Vibreck, Step Back History, who is hard left, has denounced tankies. Yes, Step Back is definitely part of the more anarcho-communist sect of the left. And so the ANCOMs definitely don't like the tankies, but there are also some ANCOMs who will use the tankies as kind of useful idiots for their own goals. But that's, like I said, like a Parkman or Packman, whatever that guy's name is. That was basically his idea, as well as like, re-education. They both expressed similar sentiments. Let's use the tankies to our advantage, even if we don't personally like them. The same way the Soviet Union decided to use the Nazis to try and gain control of Eastern Europe. So yeah, Tom Jenkins. I see some on the right trying to resurrect corporatism, and I don't get it. Government plus corporations equals bad. It's like, yeah, like corporatism is something that I think most people don't fully understand, because they think corporatism and they think, corporate rule of corporations, but no. But I need to do more precise digging into it to get to the precise details. So maybe I'll do something on that in the future. Let's see. Let's see. All right, so still more talking about tankies in the comments. Let's see here. Okay, all right. Somebody not talking about tankies there. Okay. MC Squared. What do you think about Nick Cannon's recent racist and historical revisionist comments in which he said that black people are the true Semitic people? Well, in my video catalog, I have a video about the group called the Black Hebrew Israelites. And when I published that video a little over a year ago now, I didn't think that the video would become more relevant over time rather than less. Then again, part of me isn't really surprising considering what I learned about the Black Hebrew Israelites. It's like one of the draws to Black Hebrew Israelism is this idea of self-empowerment for Black communities. And unfortunately, sometimes self-empowerment can take form in positive ways, and other times it can take form in negative ways. And unfortunately, Black Hebrew Israelism is a negative way, I find. And so, yeah, I'd say, hey, Nick Cannon, I've never thought about him much. I remember him on some stuff involved with Nickelodeon back in the 2000s, but yeah, I didn't see this coming. And my views on his views about, black people being the true Semitic people, I made a 90-minute video about that. I don't feel like rehashing it here. I just think for the most part, it's nonsense. Let's see. Brit Boy, how hard are concealed carry permits to get in California? Pretty hard. California is one of those places that sees the Second Amendment as a suggestion rather than a right. If you're lucky, you have a county sheriff that's more lenient and will, go around those different things. But once again, it's a very county by county basis how easy it is to get a gun in California. Certain counties make it easier. Other counties make it a lot harder. All right, let's see. Medrano, was the Holy Roman Empire a federation or confederation? I'd say the Holy Roman Empire was more confederation. It was definitely more confederation considering how little power the Holy Roman Emperor actually had. It's like you couldn't really tax the citizens of the Holy Roman Empire very easily. It was like whatever money came to him came from the other princes and bishoprics from across the empire. So yeah, it wasn't an easy thing. So I'd say it was more a confederation than a federation. All right. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. So yeah, air smells nice. Why did France stop Saar offensive during World War II? I can't say. I can't. I don't know the Saar offensive, so I'm afraid that's something else I have to look into. Christian Vibrecht, have you met Indy Nidell or any members of the Great War Crew? I have not. At least I haven't seen any of them at events like VidCon or EduCon. And since, both events were canceled this year, I'm probably not going to meet them anytime this year as well. I would love to meet some of them. To be honest, I actually like the new host of the Great War more than Indy, to be honest. Like, I was watching Indy's World War II show, and then it got boring, and so I stopped because it was very much, moving pieces on a map mostly. So yeah. See ya. All right. Medrano again. How much of a monkey wrench would be a third popular party in the USA? It's really hard for a third party to last a super long time in a first past the post system, It's really hard for that to happen. So if you want a country, if you want a government that has more than two main parties, then you have to structure the legislature and representation in a way that allows that to happen. So it would be a monkey wrench, but I just don't see the structures being there. It's like whenever a third party has come up in the U.S. history, it's always either been absorbed by one of the two major parties or it absorbs one of the two major parties. And so that's usually the fate. Marcus Bisma, what's your thoughts on Turkey's decision to convert Hagia Sophia into a mosque again? My joke answer is, who's ready for a crusade? My serious answer is, yeah, it's regrettable, but Erdogan got to Erdogan, and so he's just going to Erdogan, if that makes sense. Stephen Blythe, have you met the cynical historian and Mr. Beat in person? I have, in fact, met both of them in person. I've met Mr. Beat back in 2017 at VidCon, and I met the cynical historian back in 2018 at VidCon. In fact, at VidCon 2019, the cynical historian and I shared a hotel room going to VidCon. So yeah, we know each other. We know each other pretty well. We're pretty friendly. All right. Christian Vibrecht, final question. All right, then. I won't hold you to it. What is your opinion on ranked choice voting? I think it's preferable. It definitely will give more voice to the non-major parties, but I don't think it's the fix that a lot of people think it is. I just think it's useful for letting people vote their conscience, all the while minimizing the spoiler effect. Brit Boy, are you voting pro-reform? No, I'm not a Reform Party guy. I am a registered Republican, but I don't. Once again, I've been very unhappy with the direction the party's been going. So I'll end up voting based on each individual office. I don't see myself voting for any of the Democrats on the ticket, but that doesn't mean I'll vote for the Republican either. Sometimes, out of conscience, you leave a certain part of the ballot blank. That's what I did back in 2008. Yeah, I left the president part in 2008 blank when I had to choose between McCain and Obama. I didn't like either of them. I thought the two of them were actually too similar, and so I didn't vote for either. Let's see. Brit Boy, time for a crusade. That was my jokey answer, but yep, that is definitely an answer that I understand. Air smells nice. Did the Soviet Union recover from the Great Patriotic War? I mean, it depends on what numbers you're looking at. I mean, there are even like rumors that Khrushchev was talking about like in the early 60s during the Cuban Missile Crisis that they wanted to avoid war because they hadn't yet recovered from World War II as late as the 1960s. So, yeah, that's a thing. So some might even argue that they haven't recovered yet, but that is it's hard to say that a country that has nuclear weapons hasn't recovered in any way from that war. Let's see, what happened to the tanky? Asks Tom Jenkins. I have no idea. He may have just left. The digs. The tanky retreated harder than they retreated from Cuba. All right, DC, what are your thoughts on a federal judge shutting down recount efforts in 2016? I don't know which exact story you're talking about. I can't imagine it would have been too decisive if it was actually shut down, but I could be entirely wrong there. See, Madrano, I just asked because I read the Bull Moose Party messed up the 1912 elections. Yes. Yeah, they messed up the 1912 elections. But I'd say the Bull Moose Party was more or less just Theodore Roosevelt's personality cult. That's what the Bull Moose Party really was at the end of the day. And I blame Teddy Roosevelt for giving us Woodrow Wilson. Yeah, it's his inability to ride off into the sunset is why we got arguably the worst president. See, what was the closest presidential election? Asks Stephen Blythe. 2016 was not the closest. The Electoral College mess was kind of messy in 2016, but no, the closest election was, I would say, 1876. That was Samuel Tilden versus Rutherford B. Hayes. 1960 was also very close, Mr. Jenkins. Yes. Theoretical physicist. Hello. Oh, you have a Sans avatar. Okay. All right, everybody. Theoretical physicist has a Sans avatar. You know what to do. All right. Up, more people just talking about the tanky leaving. Jordanian Christian. Why did the Persians and Arabs under the Seljuks generally dislike them? Let's see. I'm assuming you're asking why did the Persians and Arabs dislike the Seljuks? And I can't say. I haven't studied that enough. My guess would be that, the Seljuks were seen as kind of a barbarian type people, Central Asian horse archers and whatnot. So that's there's a general distaste for that stuff, but that's just a guess at the top of my head from what little I know of the Seljuks. See, air smells nice. What do you think would happen if the German Empire won World War I? I have a harder time believing that the German Empire could have actually won the First World War. Made a video about this, but basically Germany had every disadvantage possible. You'd have to completely change the alliances to give Germany a chance of winning. So yeah, basically you would need to have the British Empire and the German Empire on the same side in World War I to give the Germans a chance, I think. Because so long as Germany can access food from abroad, they can hold on. Let's see. All right. Trevor Atasi. Why so many people think the rise of China as the new global hegemon is inevitable? I personally doubt that China can dominate East Asia, let alone the world. Certainly the Japanese, the Taiwanese, and Vietnamese and Indians will not just stay watching while China devours their territory. Well, that's all going to depend on how they see things. I think it depends on how willing they perceive the U.S. at backing them up is. So I think the other countries in East Asia will be more likely to stand up to China if they think the U.S. is going to be standing with them. Otherwise, they might see it as being more worth it to side with China in any conflict than it is to stand against them. So the real concern about China isn't that they're going to become a global hegemon, but rather a regional hegemon. And that's very possible. Let's see. Tom Jenkins, hashtag bring back the tanky. Stephen Blythe, how about a video on the Gilded Age? I'm not against the idea. I just have to come up with a way to do it. That's I'd have to figure out an angle to cover it that hasn't already been done a million times. Let's see. Brit Boy, your view on Obama and the Libertarian Party. Weird combination, but Obama, I don't think was a very good president, but he was far more conventional than the current president is. And the Libertarian Party is its own worst enemy. You know, it's like they need to have a convention where a guy doesn't come on stage naked first. You know, if they can go multiple elections in a row without that happening, then we'll see about the Libertarians. Like, ideologically, I'm very sympathetic with the Libertarians, but unfortunately, they're just not disciplined enough to be a functional political party. Let's see. Jacob Wilson, hello. Do you think it likely that a Chinese civil war or something could happen? I'm not entirely sure. If a Chinese civil war did happen, it would be very different. Like, it wouldn't be like the early 20th century one where you had regional warlords, I think. A Chinese civil war could possibly happen if, say, the Western Islamic provinces tried breaking away. But then that would be more of a war of secession than a true civil war. But then again, whether or not a war of secession is a civil war is dependent upon whether or not the seceding power succeeds. See, James Weeks did nothing wrong. I don't know James Weeks, so I'll have to take your word on that or not. I don't know if all caps make me more or less likely to believe what someone's saying. See, Medrano, the Libertarian Party debates are the most hilarious thing. I love when they boo when somebody says that driver's licenses should be required. Here's the funny thing about that. It's like, philosophically, I'm kind of sympathetic to that position. On the other hand, it's like, is this really the hill you're going to die on, libertarians? It's like, I guess that's my big frustration with libertarians. It's like, I'm very sympathetic to a lot of their ideas, but they choose the weirdest hills to die on. It's like, yes, we need to legalize every single drug. You know, yes, we need medicinal heroin, medicinal black tar heroin. It's like, really, libertarians? It's like, can you not prioritize? You know? But I guess that's the only way they can stand out, since most of their reasonable positions get co-opted by one of the major parties, usually. Ben Replay asks, if you were the USA president, what would you do? I would ask, how did I become president? Because I'm only 30 and I think you have to be 35. So, you know, I'd ask what constitutional shenanigans happened here. See, Brit Boy, opinions on Jill Stein. She's kind of a crazy lady. That's it. She's kind of a crazy lady. You know, it's like she is talking about the whole, you know, like Wi-Fi causing sickness and whatnot. So yeah, she's out there. Perfect for the Green Party, but not for a normal party. See, Jacob Wilson, I think libertarians would have an easier time just merging with the GOP. You would think that, but it's this weird thing because like the biggest names in the Libertarian Party have always been ex-Republicans. But there's a reason why they're ex-Republicans, which is why I think they just don't. I think they ideologically get along with Republicans better, but the fact that they're ex-Republicans says a lot about it. DC, thoughts on the Libertarian Socialist Caucus of the Libertarian Party? I'm one of those people that has a hard time believing libertarian socialists can be a thing because, socialist requires, lots of overarching control, and libertarian usually means less control. But, they somehow exist. I can't speak to the Libertarian Socialist Caucus. Let's see you. Madrano. What you have to say about Kanye West running for president? We hardly knew ye. That is my statement on the matter. What do you think of Nick Cannon's apology? GG Green asks. I think Nick Cannon's apology wasn't an apology. It was, I'm sorry I offended you. I don't take back anything what I said. I'm not a racist. I can't be racist because I'm black. That's basically what he was saying. So yeah, DC, the GOP and LP do not agree on most social issues. That is true, though they're converging more than people would like to think. It's like the GOP more or less have given up on like things like same-sex marriage. They've more or less, just conceded the field on that whole issue since it was legalized by the Supreme Court. And now the big issue for them is mostly just preserving religious liberty of churches, at least on that front. All right, messages being retracted. DC, socialism equals worker ownership of the means of production. Not necessarily. Socialism is an umbrella term that covers a lot of different ideologies. Communism is a kind of socialism. There are versions of socialism that emphasize workers owning the means of production, and then there are those that emphasize it being owned by the state. So your preferred version of socialism might be one that is run by the workers, more syndicalist, if you might think, but that doesn't mean that the other versions of socialism aren't real socialism. See, Air Smells Nice. Do you play Hearts of Iron 4? No, I've always been more of a Victoria Empire Under the Sun kind of guy. So yeah, more of a Victoria guy rather than a Hearts of Iron guy. DC asks once again, socialism has nothing to do with government. The first libertarians were communists, supporters of communal living. I think once again, I would disagree with that. Socialism has to do with government when the variations of socialism do with government. It's a big tent. Just like there are variations on capitalism, variations on different religions, there's variation within socialism. It's not all one thing. If I can get any point across to people, socialism is that there's never just one version of a thing. Kind of like feminism isn't just one thing. Christianity is not just one thing. Let's see. All right. Any other questions here? Ben Replay. What about CK2? Crusader Kings? Once again, yeah, I haven't played Crusader Kings or Hearts of Iron, or I think I've played Europa Universalis like once, but never really got into it. I was always definitely more into Victoria. MC Squared. Do you think a Biden presidency will empower the radical left? Will it lead to more socialism in this country? It's going to depend on whether or not Biden is a figurehead president or if he actually decides to take the reins in his own administration. Biden is not a socialist, but there are people in his party who are. So if he decides to take an active rein in the direction of his government, it probably will be less. Now, if it does lead to more socialism, it won't be because he put it in there, but rather that his own party is upset with him. So, you could see the Democrats abandoning Biden the same way they abandoned LBJ back in 1968. That's a possibility. But once again, 2020 has been a weird year. We could see anything happen at this point. See, Diggs, thoughts on bringing Hong Kong back into the glorious Commonwealth? Yeah. Well, I definitely think we should make it easier for people in Hong Kong to get out of Hong Kong. So, I like what the British are doing, offering more people Hong Kong residents, British citizenship. I like that idea. And I wish the US, it's like if we were going to play this game of, we're going to play hardball against China, I think a great thing we could have done is offer, visas to anyone fleeing Hong Kong. Make it easier to get like the proper visas or to gain there's a proper term for it, exile status or whatever it's called. Let's see, Jacob Wilson, who do you think would make a good president for the current state of the country? The thing is that back in 2016, I wasn't a Kasich guy and I wasn't a Jeb Bush guy. And I think now someone with the temperament of a Kasich or a Bush would be greatly appreciated, but I don't know if they would have any chance in winning in the current political climate. So that's the kind of problem. So that's kind of the problem. It's that will the person who's best for the country right now be able to win in the current climate? Let's see. All right. Air smells nice. Did the Soviet Union seek an alliance with Germany before Germany attacked them? I need to get the exact details, but I think it was kind of mutual. It's like I know that they had a quote unquote non-aggression pact, but it was a little more than non-aggression. It was active alliance in some areas, but yeah. Let's just say they used each other. All right. All right. People talking about Adlai Stevenson for some reason. Oh, they're talking about LBJ and stuff. Okay. Oh, Diggs, you should have clapped, Mr. Casual Historian. Oh, yes, I talked about Jeb and I forgot to clap. Yeah. Okay, there's the clap. Let's see. All right. Let's see where we got time. Oh, okay. All right, we're nearing almost an hour and a half now, so I think I'm going to close this live stream in about 7 minutes. So, say the 8 or 7 minutes, I'll be closing up the live stream. So get your questions in now. Let's see. You should have clapped. Yeah. They divided Poland together. Okay. All right. Jacob Wilson again. What do you think about the Barry Weiss situation? The Barry Weiss situation is another one of these instances in which, like, it kind of proves the necessity to talk about the cancel culture kind of thing. But at the same time, it's also something that it's mostly people who are very much spend a lot of their time on Twitter are the ones mostly concerned about it. Because I don't think most people have even heard of Barry Weiss. I couldn't even tell you what her positions are or what anything she's written. I heard the name before her resignation, but I couldn't have told you much about her. So that's one of the issues about the cancel culture stuff, is that it's heavily involved. It's very much a Twitter thing. See, Diggs, your clap is satisfactory. All right, good. I did my best for Mr. Jeb. Brit Boy, opinion on Reagan. Reagan was definitely someone I think was rhetorically good. He was good on rhetoric, not so great on practice. He talked about cutting the size of government, but unfortunately he wasn't really able to. The heavy military spending made it impossible for him to keep all those promises. And he was a little naive, like when he tried to get like spending restraints passed in the 80s, making a deal with the democratically controlled Congress. He offered, it's like, okay, we'll have $1 increase in a dollar increase in taxes, but there has to be an equal amount of dollars in spending cuts. Unfortunately, they didn't put both the spending cuts and the taxes increases in the same bill. And so they passed the tax increases first, but then didn't do the spending cuts. So, you have to have both. And so that's the disappointment with Reagan. He is a little naive. All right. Stephen Blythe, your thoughts on the never-ending wars in a historical context? Well, are the wars really never-ending? That's a debatable point, but they've definitely been going on for a long time. And war is always just kind of a thing in the background. Though, funny enough, in the modern world, we're actually seeing wars less often, or at the very least, seeing wars between states less often. So whether that's a good or bad thing is, up to debate and situation by situation. Kosher chocolate. What if the emus won? Australia would be a better place. It would be ruled by its proper masters. Zealous Zucchini. I saw in your videos that you tend to use BCE and CE rather than BC and AD. Why is that? Well, my philosophy on this for a long time has been to be kind of as academic as possible. And especially if I'm doing a video talking about like Jewish history, then my policy is to use BCE and CE out of sort of respect for the subject matter. And if the history I'm talking about takes place entirely within sort of, the AD or CE era, then I don't refer to something as CE or AD at all. So the only time I really bring up BCE or BC is when I'm talking about BCE and BCE. Basically, yeah. If I'm talking about the BCE time period, I'll bring it up. But if it's entirely within AD CE, I don't talk about it at all. But that's sort of been my policy. Jacob Wilson, do you think Jefferson would be a libertarian? I don't know. I mean, the libertarians definitely aren't a big fan of slavery, but it's all about historical context. I think Jefferson was pretty libertarian for his time period. Let's see. Diggs, who won the War of 1812? It was Britain. The winner of the War of 1812 was Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky, that's it. Tchaikovsky won the War of 1812, even if it was a different 1812. See, DC, the emus did win technically. Something like 85% of Australia is uninhabited by humans. Yeah. You could argue that the emus won. But not until I see emus in Brisbane. Until I see them ruling in Brisbane or that wavy-looking boat building, I don't think they can declare full victory over the Australians. Garrett Allen, what do you think is the most important lesson America can learn from its past? The most important lesson America can learn from its past, I think, is that is a really good question. That is something I wish I had more than a few seconds to think over. I honestly don't know. I guess it's that, that Americans will eventually do the right thing. It's like that. What's that Churchill quote? Americans will eventually do the right thing after they've tried everything else. An addendum I would add to that quote is, which is better than a lot of countries do. Some countries never do the right thing. And I think with that question, I am going to be ending the chat right about here. I know there are lots of questions that you guys might have now, but we're hitting that hour and 30-minute mark. So I think that'll be the end. So thank you all for hanging out with me for the last 90 minutes. And I will see you guys next month when I announce the next live stream. All right. Till then, see you guys later.